You deposit your life savings, assuming the banks are ironclad. You believe the ledgers, the auditors, and the massive vaults are backed by tangible value. But in 1963, Wall Street faced a reality that shattered the foundation of that trust. The collapse did not start with a government error or a market crash. It started with one man, Tino De Angelis. He was a man possessed by a single, massive ambition. He intended to seize total control of the global soybean and salad oil market. To fuel an empire of that size, he needed capital on a scale that dwarfed his own holdings. He looked at the giants of Wall Street, the institutions that demanded absolute proof of collateral, and he did not see an obstacle. He saw an opportunity. Tino began to build his kingdom, not on wealth, but on a vision of it. He needed the world's most trusted names to vouch for his inventory. He turned to American Express, the titan of global finance. The game was simple. Tino would store his oil in vast steel tanks in New Jersey, and the auditors would come to verify the fortunes stored within. But as the inspectors arrived, they had no idea that they were walking into a trap designed to hollow out the entire financial system. Tino knew a fundamental law of physics that the auditors ignored. Oil is less dense than water. It floats. Inside the massive steel tanks in Bayonne, he ordered his crew to fill the structures with seawater, leaving only a thin, shimmering layer of oil at the very top. It was a physical illusion on a gargantuan scale. When the American Express inspectors arrived, they climbed the iron ladders to the top of the tanks. They took their standard dipsticks and lowered them into the dark depth. The stick passed through the oil, submerged into the water below, and hit the bottom. When they pulled it back out, the tool emerged, coated in a thick, golden layer of grease. The inspectors did not check the density. They did not drain the tanks. They looked at the grease, nodded, and marked their ledgers. They assumed the massive containers were filled with liquid gold. Based on those readings, they signed off on warehouse receipts worth millions. Tino had successfully turned a science experiment into a multi-million-dollar loan, proving that even the most rigorous financial oversight could be defeated by a simple layer of floating grease. One tank was not enough. To keep the lie alive, Tino constructed a labyrinth of hidden pipes beneath the Bayonne facility. This was his masterstroke. When auditors scheduled an inspection for Tank A, Tino and his crew would pump the thin, golden layer of oil through the pipes into Tank B, then Tank C, staying exactly one step ahead of the inspectors. It was a high-stakes shell game. Tino watched from the shadows of his office, timing the flow of valves with the precision of a conductor. He had to be perfect. If a valve stuck or a pipe leaked, the entire empire would collapse under the weight of the saltwater. But the inspectors never looked for the pipes. They walked from tank to tank, trusting the same grease-coated dipstick, never realizing they were measuring the same few thousand gallons of oil over and over again. Tino felt the rush of total control. He was not just borrowing money, he was manufacturing reality. With every successful inspection, his confidence surged. He began to believe his own myth, acting with the arrogance of a man who owned the banks, the auditors, and the truth itself. The deception became his life, and for a while it worked perfectly. The shell game was no longer enough to satisfy Tino. He needed more. He needed to be a titan. He turned his gaze toward the Soviet Union, orchestrating a trade agreement so massive it eclipsed everything he had built before. He secured loans based on his warehouse receipts, pushing the total valuation to $1.5 billion in modern currency. He was betting the entire structure of his deception on a single titanic deal. The complexity of the logistics became a nightmare. He had to coordinate shipping schedules, navigate international bureaucracy, and maintain the illusion of massive inventory across dozens of new sites. Every day he sat in his office, his hands steady, while his empire stretched thin across the ocean. The pressure was not just on the tanks anymore. It was on the global market. He was playing with fire, and the heat was rising. He spent his nights staring at ledgers that were pure fiction, knowing that one wrong move by a Soviet official or one delay in transit would expose the saltwater. The house of cards was trembling. He had built a monument to greed, but the foundation was just a layer of oil resting on deep, cold water. He was all in, waiting for a wind that would cement his legend, unaware that the world was about to wake up. The music stopped in November 1963. The Soviet deal, the anchor of Tino's entire ambition, disintegrated in a single afternoon. News of the collapse hit the trading floor like a shockwave. Tino sat in his office as the phone began to ring, and it did not stop. Wall Street banks were not asking for explanations. They were demanding payment. Margin calls flooded his desk, each one a sharp, undeniable demand for cash he did not possess. He stared at the ledgers, but the numbers no longer held their meaning. The market sensed blood. Prices for the very commodities he traded began to plummet, erasing the value of his phantom inventory in real time. Tino stood up, walked to the window, and watched the ticker tape machine stutter. It was moving too fast. He tried to call his contacts, but the lines were dead. The institutions that once bowed to his warehouse receipts were now moving to protect themselves, pulling their support and leaving him exposed. The frantic scramble had begun. Traders screamed across the floor, sell orders piled up, and the liquidity he relied on simply vanished. He was no longer a titan of industry. He was a man holding a hollow shell, listening to the roar of a system about to tear him apart. The auditors arrived in Bayonne with orders to seize. They did not come for excuses. They came for the oil. They marched to the massive steel tanks, wrenches in hand, ready to liquidate the collateral. One by one, they cracked the heavy valves at the base of the structures. They expected the thick, dark flow of high-value oil. Instead, the pipes groaned and spat out a thin, clear stream of seawater. It splashed against the concrete, worthless and cold. The inspectors stared as the deception poured out onto the ground. The reality hit the financial markets instantly. When the news reached Wall Street, the atmosphere turned toxic. The illusion of value evaporated in seconds. Two major brokerage houses, heavily exposed to the phantom inventory, folded into bankruptcy under the weight of the revelation. Investors panicked. American Express, the titan that had vouched for the non-existent oil, saw its stock price crater, plummeting by over 50% in a single day of trading. The ticker machines jammed as sell orders overwhelmed the floor. The most sophisticated auditors on Earth had been humiliated by a high school science trick, and the system was reeling from the impact. Tino De Angelis faced the gavel, his empire reduced to a legal file and a prison sentence. He was locked away, but the ghost of his saltwater scheme remained in the halls of high finance. The scandal left a permanent scar on the integrity of global auditing. It forced every institution to ask how a single man with a pump and a few tanks could dismantle the confidence of the world's greatest banks. But the question did not end in the courtroom. It echoed into the future, growing louder with every new financial instrument. Look at the modern landscape of wealth. Trillions of dollars shift across borders in milliseconds, backed by complex algorithms and digital ledgers. We assume the value is solid. We trust the systems that certify our security, yet beneath the screen and the data, how much of that wealth is physically anchored? How much is built on a foundation of certainty? And how much is merely floating on a thin, shimmering layer of oil? The system is still running, the inspectors are still checking the tanks. But are you sure they are seeing the truth? Or are they just looking at the grease on the stick?